Hey, you know Buz Hasson? Yeah, the Living Corpse comics and all that. Well, did you also know he's a tattoo artist? I sat down recently with he and Marcus McGill because Buz had just tattooed a piece of art on Marcus's arm, and it was amazing. And they talk about the process and they talk about the inspiration. And Buz talks a lot about old time tattooing and tattoo artists. It was really an awesome conversation. Join us. And I am here with a couple of people who have become family members to me, and by one way or another. Marcus McGill, who has been involved with me and the coffee house since I've been doing it. And even before then, through our love of conventions, and Mr. Buz Hasson. Boom.
Hey guys.
We've chatted before about all kinds of art. And I've got my living corpse here behind me to kind of observe us and keep us company.
Is that a pillow?
It is not. This is actually the banner that you sent me. And I have
the flat. Oh yeah, the bandana.
I have it draped over I had it hung up, but you couldn't really see it. So I have it over a pumpkin.
Nice.
It does
was
look
on our
like a pillow.
I thought it was a throw pillow. I got all excited.
That would make an awesome pillow.
It would.
that image is from a shirt we did that said I only like you for your brains, which is a
that is perfect.
It's kind of a take from Venom. Venom was very like that.
If you have any more of those shirts, I need to acquire one. So
I'll see if I do.
Okay.
I'll dig through the stuff.
Now we were tonight's little get together here was we were going to talk about your being a tattoo artist, and it's something that the art fascinates me. It's amazing, beautiful. I'm a fan of Henry Rollins' back.
Yeah, he's the man.
He is the man in so many ways and for so many reasons.
Yeah.
And you work at the Seance Tattoo Parlor.
I do. I work at two shops actually, the Seance Tattoo Parlor and Skull and Rose Tattoo Studio.
Okay, so really, if anybody wanted to look up some of your work or get you to do one, are those two shops both in New Jersey?
One is in Pennsylvania. Seance is in Ben Salem, Pennsylvania, and Skull and Rose Tattoo Studio is in Elton, Maryland. So I'm sort of like in the tri-state area. I've been tattooing for 23 years in this area, so I have a lot of clients all over. And I've been working at these two shops for like the last probably, let's say 4 or 5 years. And I'm actually finishing a 5-year run at Seance at the end of April this year, and I'll be formally at Skull and Rose full time after that. But yeah, if they want to reach out about tattooing, I would say do it through the Instagram, which is at Buz Corpse. That's the best way to get a hold of me for that.
Great. How did you, and being the as we had talked about before, always having the artist in you and the comic books, was it a natural transgression, a natural transition for you to get into doing the tattoos?
Yeah, I think anyone that can draw, could tattoo. Tattooing is like a culture that's predates language, it predates books, it predates society, really. So anybody can tattoo if you want to, you know what I mean? The act of making a mark on the body permanently as a ritual is really where it stems from. A lot of my interest in it was through obviously MTV and heavy metal music and being a skateboarder and the punk rock scene, things like that. I was a big fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers growing up before a lot of the mainstream music came through. So their antics and like being visibly tattooed, they just look like crazy beach warriors to me. I just wanted to be one. And and that sort of started my fascination with it. Ironically, like a lot of bands and guys in bands over the years have like bad tattoos, but the Peppers had like nice work, and I had like researched their processes and through interviews and stuff, and they were big fans of the art, you know, and they were getting like pretty elaborate work. It was anything from portraiture of Jimi Hendrix to like Alaskan Inuit tribal tattoos. They had like, they were very cultured like in the imagery, and I was like so fascinated by it. And so I started to get the magazines, which is where I would say most people from my generation, starting in the 90s, would have gotten into tattooing from, was through the magazines. If you're at the supermarket or the bookstore and then you see Tattoo Magazine, or, you know, a lot of the magazines that are big now weren't out then. There was only like maybe 3. Savage was one of them, which was more extreme stuff like body piercing and body modification. Tattoo was the mainstay, which sort of spawned out of Easy Rider magazine, which is a biker magazine that was very popular for exposing tattooing to the society, because there really was nowhere to see it before that except for the circus. I know a lot about its evolution because I learned from a guy who had been tattooing for 30 years before I started. He started in '79. So my interest in it came from punk rock, metal, MTV, and the magazines, and I just started to take interest in it. And I would check out local shops and like kind of pick up on the vibe. And each shop was different. Every artist was different. And I got to say, like, I always sort of say it went from counterculture to mainstream, because as a small town kid without a lot of money or even really a lot to do, you sort of stumble on these fringe things that you think are just yours. And then you find other people. And then it's like this cool thing, this like edgy thing that you're getting into and you're learning about together and through other people. And it wasn't, you know, it's very mainstream now, which I can talk about like how it, where it's come from and where it is. But yeah, I would say it was more of a fringe discovery for me. You know what I mean? I was kind of like on the outskirts, you know, the same way that like I talked about comics in the last video. Comics were very fringe too. They were often throwaway material, you know what I mean? And now people sell them for millions of dollars. So
I
it's
was thinking
interesting.
of that's what
Yeah.
you were likening it to. It's like the whole, the kids who are geeks and freaks and
Hmm.
end up
I can
all
remember,
meeting each other.
yeah. I can remember like if someone came to visit, I would hide them, you know. I didn't want them to think I was too old for them, but you know, you're into what you're into.
Right. So I know that you did a tattoo on Marcus not that terribly long ago. And
Yeah.
Marcus, would you want to
Month ago.
talk a little bit about kind of what you were saying about what that means to you?
Yes. So, like you said, I actually met Buz at Monster Mania last year, and coincidentally, we actually have a mutual friend. One of my fraternity brothers, Buz knows, you know, and he knows him person, Uncle Paulie, who's a great tattoo artist himself.
He is a great tattoo artist.
Yeah, so that's how Buz and I actually connected, was just knowing Paul, you know, Uncle Paulie.
Yeah.
And then, so that was an instant connection. And one of the things that I actually respect about Buz is, you know, before the process, before I even got in his chair, you know, he wanted to know a little bit about me personally and my reasoning behind the tattoo. I mean, you know, you have artists that they'll just do a tattoo just because, you know, they're getting paid and you know, but Buz actually took the time to, you know, see where my headspace was, and then came up with the image that I have on my arm, you know, based off of, you know, what he got from, you know, learning about me. So this particular piece is you can't really see it too much on the camera, but it's Yoda and Grogu. When I was born, my family tells me the story all the time. My nickname was Yoda. They called me an orange Yoda. I had big ears and big head and wrinkles. So that was my nickname growing up. And it just stuck with me. I'm a huge Star Wars fanatic, proud of it. But you know my story, DonnaJean, what I went through last year with COVID. They pretty much butchered my arm. I had these scars, and Buz took the time. What was it, like 6 hours, Buz? 5 hours?
I think, yeah, around there. Yeah.
Knocked it out. And the piece, like I said, it means something to me personally, not just because my nickname is Yoda, but I always looked at being wise beyond my years. But as far as this image of Grogu, is a picture of Grogu when he was using the Force choke, and I'm basically saying I'm wise, but I'm quick to choke somebody out too. Need me. But Buz did an excellent job.
Smart but fierce.
Yep, smart but fierce. But I plan on going back to him for the rest of my pieces. We already talked about the next piece, which hopefully I could get done in March before he goes off to Monster Mania. And that's my middle name, Jason. I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. And then he's going to do my Killmonger necklace around my neck, the Golden Jaguar necklace as well. So anybody watching this, I highly recommend Buz. He is an exceptional artist. I mean, his work is impeccable, unlike any other. And he's a great person too. I mean, the whole time we were shooting the breeze in the chair. Thanks, brother. Thanks. And
I get a lot.
Hold your arm up like this to maybe show a little bit of it off.
I can send you guys a picture of it too later.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
great.
yeah, there you go. There's
Oh,
Yoda.
that's awesome.
And here's Grogu. So
All right.
I'll send you a picture of his tattoo so you have that.
Yep.
Beautiful. I had read I came across something once that said scars are like tattoos, but with a better story. But the fact that you actually have both, the tattoo in part because of the scars, and they kind of became part interwoven into one.
Yeah, I mean, like even on Yoda's face, one of the biggest scars, Buz was able to ink that area where it actually looks like part of the tattoo, So like everyone that sees my arm, they say, "Oh man, that's amazing," and they can't even recognize the scars unless they're right up on it, and then I actually show it. Like, here's the scar, here's the scar, here's the scar, So that just goes to how great Buz is. So
a lot of people, most people always know where the scar is, obviously, because it's, in your psyche as well. And then, but yeah, I mean, we will always try to utilize the shape of things to disguise, push away, and bring forward elements in the imagery to help that process. I would say maybe 30% of the time the ideas won't work, and I have to inspire a client to think outside their box a little bit so that the cover-ups and the fix-ups will work. But yeah, I mean, I think anything is possible. It just depends on, between artist and client, who's willing to do what with what. I've seen some terrible stuff in 23 years and fixed a lot of it, So your particular story, I've had a lot of clients come through and had similar stuff. So when I met with you, it was just like picking up, like riding a bicycle again, with meeting someone new and catching the narrative behind it, because sometimes people will go out and get drunk and get a tattoo and it's like a silly night and everybody gets the same one or whatever. That's still a story. You know what I mean? So the super ultra deep stuff, the silly stuff, it all has a story. The motive, like you said, when we met, that first meeting, like no tattoo is done between any artist or client that doesn't start there. Preferred that it's a memorable one and a good one. But yeah, it's hard for me to separate a service with connecting. We're in each other's aura field. It's impossible. I've had situations, not often, but situations where people come in and they're having a bad day. You know what I mean? And it's like, you've got to work with that now. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people who need healing, you know what I mean, over the years. And I think what happened for me was right around 2015, it started to get so obvious that I started to learn actually like Reiki healing and energy work with professionals to better create supportive environments for those people. Because I've seen artists like not be able to handle clients' emotions and things like that. And it's a painful process. So whether you're having the greatest day of your life or the worst, it still hurts and you have to go through that. And so a good bedside manner, you know, for lack of a better term, is kind of what artists need. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of worldly experiences and a lot of great teachers to have learned that pretty early on. I was a makeup artist before tattooing, so working with people, touching them, it's a delicate thing. But when it comes to the arts, you know, usually if you're talking about a client or a canvas versus artist, like, you know, the more copacetic and collaborative the people can be, the better the experience, you know. So I had a great one with you, man. I learn a lot from my clients as well. It's not just me like helping people making awesome art and being the best. And I've had clients come through and tell me stuff about their lives, and it, you know, learning your process and, you know, why you know, about being a fan of Lucas, getting into the film now. It's like, it's a no brainer. You know what I mean? It's cool to see the pieces connect together for other people. It's an empowering thing, you know, to help someone self-express. You know, it's a big responsibility. It's very trendy now to be a tattooer. It's very cool, but that responsibility doesn't go away. So it's important as a young tattooer or an old one to remember why we were doing it to begin with.
Yeah. Like even with, you know, Buz asked me, he was like, you know, so what do you want next? And like I said, I'm planning on getting, you know, Jason on my arm to cover up the rest of the scars. And so he said, send me a picture. And I sent him a picture, and it's a image of Derek Mears' Jason from a deleted scene of the 2009 film. And when I told him, you know, middle name's Jason, but also what that image spoke to me as far as like him looking, even though he's holding a decapitated head with the hockey mask on it, I'm like, he's staring, and he has the sack head on, you know, the sack on. I'm like, but he's staring at his destiny, you know? That was like the meaning behind the image, and Buz gets that, you know, a reason why I want
Totally,
to
yeah.
yeah. So,
I like unusual. I like a more like anybody can get Jason, but I like a more unusual like purpose. Why people ask for Jason, and most people don't know that there's different Jasons, first of all.
Right, which Jason?
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, like I always want to hear, you know, like people will say, you know, they want, you know, anything really, a Marvel character or, you know, a fictional character, a mythological character. And I usually, you know, I don't dive right in and ask them why. I usually will let people tell me, you know what I mean? Like I had heard a quote from Toby Hooper once about how when he meets people, he doesn't really talk to them. He lets them talk to him so he can hear their story, be inspired by that, you know what I mean? And allow that to go into his creative processes, hearing other people. And so, you know, I know a lot of tattooers, they don't really talk much at all. They want to tattoo. And I often wonder like how that's even possible. Like you know, I tend to talk too much, but.
Oh man, we talked about everything under the sun, but that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
You know, so.
It's a lot of time together. So you will go there, you know?
Yeah. It makes time fly too.
that is half the trick. It's talking to you to get through the pain.
Yeah.
My first recollection about somebody with a tattoo was my grandfather, and my grandfather and grandmother lived with us until we moved from New York when I was 15. And he was a big old Swedish guy. And his story was that he had left home at like 8 as a cabin boy in the Merchant Marines, ran away from home.
Wow.
And, you know, we really never knew anything about his backstory. He was this kind of, to me as a child, big hovering kind of a guy. But he had like, you know, like a tattoo of like the anchor, like from the being on the boat and things like that. And it was very faded. But for whatever reason, to me, it was a part of who he was. And the people that I have known that have had tattoos that were not mistake tattoos, that were not drunken night tattoos, it seems as though it's getting a part of who they are, represented
It's
that
funny.
way.
It's funny you mentioned the anger, because there's either one or two reasons why he had that. He was either on a boat and you would put the anchor on the arm, that if you were standing northbound on the boat, that's what side the anchor was on the ship. So it was almost like a reminder.
Yeah. I heard that.
Tattoo for a lot of Navy guys. I'd heard stories about that. Or he's a big Popeye fan.
Well, my understanding was that he was actually a sail maker. So it makes sense to me,
Sure.
that,
My grandfather, my mother's father, was my first experience with tattoos. He had two, one on each arm, and his name was Frank Bowles, and he was a CB, and he was in the Korean War, and he had gotten tattooed. I believe he had gotten tattooed in Korea, but he had the hula girl on one arm dancing under a palm tree, and a Black Panther on the other, and he had this great story about how he went in with $40 and got both tattoos, which totaled, I think, $37 at the time. And this probably would have been the 50s. And the tattooer probably lied and said he didn't have the change. So he gave him a star on his hand as the change, which I thought was a great story. I wasn't really even into tattoos when he was sharing this with me. But looking back as the tattooer I've become, it's awesome for me that there was someone in my family that had him before me and had that type of tale. The guy that I learned from, his name was Bob Montana, and he was from New Jersey, and I spent 8 years with him in Jersey. I'm from Maryland originally, and he taught me a lot about the past in tattooing before I even got started. And it was like I had an interest in history behind things. I was a big researcher, for making the comics and stuff. So getting into tattooing and learning about it, like he always had, one of the things I first learned when I walked into his shop for the first time was, look at the history in this place. Like you could just see it all over the walls, from like framed pictures of other tattooers who've come and gone or were still around at the time, pictures with him with them and at different conventions. And the coolest thing is that all of this was existing in this shop for him, which was called Fusion of Styles. It was an awesome name, but it all existed before people had computers in their homes. So there was no way to learn about any of it without going to the shop physically, going inside and risking the danger of what you may walk into and what you may see or don't know what you're going to see. Every shop is different, Now there are a lot like art galleries, whereas before they were these like mosaic places of great experience and history, from travel, people coming and going, the artists traveling and going, all that stuff building up, the libraries that they had. Just a Google on Sailor Jerry alone will show you it's not just about the rum, it's like the story behind that guy. His tattoos got popular because they were clean, solid, and good. And he tattooed enough people in the military, they traveled enough, they spread his name in a positive way for solid work. And that's how he got so popular. Now he had an untimely death. And then later his estates and stuff were sold to make the rum. And you've seen the traditional girls and the Aloha monkeys and stuff on all the air fresheners for your car. But like before all that, before the merchandising, before you're selling tattoos without the tattoo involved, Jerry did it solid. It came out later that he bootlegged a lot of the girls he drew, the pinup girls he drew from fashion magazines and stuff, which was funny because it's, there's always a little nugget of info comes out of something when people are come and gone. But he was the man. He was the man for making solid tattoos, and then that just being what was enough. No advertising, like none of it. No social media. Just doing a nice tattoo and having it sail off to Japan, or a nice tattoo and having it go back to Wisconsin. And
there's
it just
so
spread.
much to be said about your word and your work, just carrying.
Yeah, that's how I work. I learned that from my mentor Bob, and he would pass it on to me from other tattooers that he spent a lot of time with. He spent a lot of time with a lot of famous old school tattooers. He himself was a student of a fellow by the name of Sailor Moses, who's really well known, and Moses, was a train hopper and picked it up in San Francisco from fellows who were in the circus. So essentially, ironically, I'm a 5th generation circus tattooer, but it's the sideshow aspect of tattooing is still very much alive. And I think that's the subtle draw to the interest in it, is the taboo. And you become sort of a storyteller as you become a tattooer. You know, it's part of it. You know, tattooing ritually in the tribes, in the Aboriginals, you know, the pain through the process, you know, whoever the shaman was that was applying it had to speak with the, you know, inductee, and that never ended. We're still doing that today with modern technology. So it's a very rich culture that, you know, can easily get lost without looking further into it, and, you know, just on the marketing or sort of sex appeal to tattooing. You know what I mean?
Do you find
Yeah,
yourself
Trailing,
ever,
but
find yourself being challenged by any particular?
all the time. It never ends. Yeah, that's what I like. Growing up as an artist and a makeup effects artist, and working with producers and directors or editors, it's nothing is ever good enough. You know what I mean? It's like you do 60 drawings and you're back to the first one, fixing it, and then you're, you know, doing a 61st drawing. And so with tattooing, it's the same thing. It's like, you know, I have an idea, but I'm a separate individual, and we're connecting with a client who has an idea. And sometimes we butt heads and sometimes we don't. And I always try to give a client what they want. But a lot of times, because of the popularity of it and the access to tattooing now, the magic is gone in the wonder of what an artist will do. It's sort of all thought out now. Everyone has a device and can be like, this is what I want it to look like. And it takes away from what could be created that you haven't seen, the unknown, by just collaborating freestyle with a creator, with an artist. Because then you get, I have had so many people, I think the thing that's said to me most is, it looks better than I thought it would, and I love it. You know what I mean? Like it looks, I don't know if they expected me to do a bad job or if it was like they had a different picture in their mind. But because I have so much exposure to tattooing and the vast design qualities that the world has produced, I mean, it's an infinite realm of art and style. So a lot of times I'll, as this sort of like all downloaded knowledge in my head of everything, I try to look at the client, talk to the client, and feel them out for what their interests are, the styles they like, things they're into, if it's simplicity or complexity or more design or more illustrative. And then I try to produce something that will be above average, above mediocre for them, because I think that there's always a chance to do something new, and you miss that if you're just like Googling everything, you know, oh, there it is, so that, you know, we just print out and do it. I do that sometimes too. Some people are not as adventurous, like in the evolution of the possibility of what they're about to do. That's mostly permanent, you know what I mean? But yeah, I always try to create something cool as much as I do every tattoo like it's the first and last tattoo I'm ever going to do in my life.
Well, like
So,
I sent Buzz that picture, I trust him enough to, I'm like, hey, have your way. Whatever you come up with, I'm good. You know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I trust
I
him
look
enough
at the
to do
area, the area you get it, the size it has to be to look good, to fit the spot. You know what I mean? Things like that, the flow, you know, tattooing, you know, in the 90s, there was a lot of artists that came through, Aaron Kane, Guy Aitchison, and they were all bringing in these ideas about flow on the body, like flowing with the shape of whatever it is. If it's a thigh and it goes like that, you know what I mean? Things aren't just like this size wise everywhere you go, you know. Some tattoos, they fit in like these ergonomical spots, you know what I mean? If it's just like a face peeking out or a hand coming around. So it's all about the shape of the area on the individual, you know. And you do have to test people's metal. You have to see how, you know, does this individual seem like a go-getter? Are they going to be able to sit for hours to do this? Because some people are more aggressive and some people are more meek as people. And so they want smaller stuff or simpler stuff or things that only take 2 hours. And then other people are much more gung-ho and will do something that takes 8 hours. And so you can't just be like, oh, this is what you want. Okay, I'll print it out and I'll do it. you have to look at the person. Do they have a lot of tattoos already? Have they been tattooed before? Do they have tattoos in difficult areas? Because there's always, everybody's body is different, and the only place it doesn't hurt is on somebody else. So all these spots, you know, they're going to be more painful, you know, and you have to feel people out. Like I've told people no before, because I'm looking at them and I'm like, you have all small tattoos. So now you want something that's this, and, you know, you need to understand that, you know, if you can't complete it, you have to come back, you know, type stuff like that. So I'm a realist with people, only because I've had a lot of experience. You know, I forgot how many people I've tattooed, you know what I mean? And now I just chalk it up to how many shops I've worked in and how many years I've been doing it. But people, what I love about working with people is a lot of times they'll surprise me. They'll surprise me with like a last minute willingness to do something out of their comfort zone, which is awesome, because then you have a chance to make something pretty cool.
Do you ever have anybody come in who doesn't have any idea of what they want?
Occasionally, yeah. I have people that they've seen the work enough, they know people that have my work, they're convinced, and they just set it up. You know what I mean? Nowadays with the internet, you know, we can talk to people ahead of time and sort of plan things out. 90% of the time, the designs pre-made before you get there don't fit, because it's a personal thing. So, you know, it's like if you got an eye exam from home, you know, like you have to be in person, you have to go through it together. So sometimes they'll come in and they don't have a clue like how they want it. They just know they want it. They know that they've seen I've done nice work consistently enough to agree to get tattooed. So I usually will design, when something like that happens, I will usually design like 2 or 3 versions of it, because after that it all starts looking the same. And so I'll do like 3 very different things and then show them, and then they always gravitate towards one, and they're like, oh, I really like that one. And then, you know, I'll give them a few minutes while I set up to do the tattoo to contemplate it, to get any other ideas, things like that. But I find that most people, they've spent some time on it already these days. You know what I mean? Very rarely do people come in, they're like, oh, I just decided I want it. I have no idea what I want. That very rarely happens anymore with the internet. People are very well researched where they want to go, how they want it done. It's actually, there's so much knowledge about tattooing. It's sort of tightened the noose on creativity a little bit. I will always break out of the box, whether they crunch it down me or not, but at least to show them like the potential, like, hey, this could be this cool, you know what I mean? Because I'm always battling like what I've seen before and what we can create that hasn't been done. But you know, if I draw it out of my hand and not look at anything, it's going to be original anyway. Like that's just how it happens, and that goes for any artist, you know. So that's ultimately what I think I try to do, is just be as original as possible with stuff. But yeah, I mean, I would say most people come in now and they got a plan. They've seen some cool stuff. They've been inspired by the masses online of amazing talent, because the bar is very high, and they're just going for consistency. So they're not like so willing to let anyone do it as much as they are. I've heard about this shop, I've heard about this artist, and that's the reputation that I'm going through. I don't even really advertise any because of it, because it's still working that way, you know.
Well, I guess in regards to it, is there, and the answer is probably no, but I was wondering if there's anything that you would like to tattoo that you haven't done yet. And I was thinking probably if there was, you would probably just do it.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot before I got so busy. I would design a lot of stuff ahead of time and just pin it up on the walls, and people would be like, who's got that? I'm like, nobody. And they'd be like, I want it. And I think I did like 11, I've tattooed for 23 years. And I think there was like a bracket of 11 years straight. There was like a straight decade where I would just stay up late and draw the craziest, cool stuff I liked and just stick it all over my walls. And then I do my regular appointments. And eventually, like, people were like, yo, I want that one, or I want that one. And we call that stuff flash, and you'll see it in tattoo shops. It's like in squares. And most of the time, I mean, before there was the internet, people were like, I don't know what I want, I just know I want a tattoo. And this guy went over here, he said this guy was good. So they go in and look around like, oh, that looks awesome, I like that. And if the price is right, get it done. Like I said, the bar is really high now. Every time I turn around, I discover another tattooer who's amazing. who's bringing, you know, A+ effort to the design work. So it really just comes down to what people like now, you know, what you're drawn to and their own story, like what they saw that got them thinking, I want a tattoo and this is what I want. You know, a lot of times if, you know, if you're a fan of something, it manifests already, but other times it'll like there's a lot of trends in tattooing now, where you're seeing a lot of repetition in designs. And that's always been in tattooing, you know, from Sailor Jerry, you know, did probably, you know, 100,000 hula girls on people. You know, he might have changed the colors up or something each time he did it, but you're seeing a lot of like trends now where it's like the same type of stuff over and over again. All of it's great. It's all executed really, really well. It looks good on the body. But I think when it comes to picking out like what you get, you really got to dig deep into yourself, because a lot of people want to be tattooed and they like the look of being heavily tattooed, and because it's in the advertising now, it's in all the posters and the merchandising has like the tattooed guy holding the bag of dog food, you know what I mean? And so everybody wants to be, you know, they're willing to be tattooed. It's more accepted. So I don't think there's a lot of originality in like what people choose to get. So I think it's key to like be like, you know, who are you as an individual? Like, where are you going in your life path? And allow those things to coincide with what you get tattooed. I have a lot of different tattoos, some bad, some good, some fantastic, you know, and it's all an evolution, you know, to from like what you're into now and then what you get later. You know, I don't have any regrets on any of them, because I can go back to each tattoo and be like, oh, that was in like the early 2000s when, you know, I was picking out designs that had been my favorites for years. And then when I got them all, you know, 5 years goes by and you're like, now I want original stuff that someone else drew, you know. A lot of times in the early days, I would draw my own designs and then get them tattooed and they would do great. But then I would be like, oh, I don't like the way I drew that. And I'd want to add or change it. And then I start realizing, yeah, you know, what would be really cool is if I just had other people do them, you know. And so that's a lot of times people will stick very rigid about what they want. And I do it exactly how they want it. And I do a great job and they love it. But in the design, I'm like, you know, there's a couple of things that you could have done to make it that much more interesting. So that you're going to have it till you die, unless you get it lasered off. So the longer you have the design, the more interesting it is, the more there is to look at, you know, the cooler it is. So it's the same thing with size. A lot of people will be like, well, I don't want it too big. And I'm like, this is the shape of the area, so you should do it close to this shape. If this is the shape of the area and you do it like this big, then later they're always like, I should have got it bigger. You know, what can you do around it now? You know, because you get used to it. So you want, you know, now the instant gratification in you is like, I want more to it. That's been my experience.
Be able to stand out as the art. Yeah.
I love being in public and seeing amazing tattoos. You know, like I'm not like a lot of tattooers today are super competitive, and I've never been competitive because I'm competing with myself. I'm competing with the last thing I did. So I love to be out in public and be like, oh, that's amazing. Like, who did that? And most of the time I'll never have heard of the artist or the shop because there's so many of them now. But there was a time when I had heard of them all, you know, and there was like this sort of track record of who worked where and who learned from who. And that was an awesome time because you could learn about tattooing that way. Now it's all at your fingertips. So a lot of the history gets lost in the hype around, you know, being tattooed. But I'm one of the, you know, the few guys who was lucky enough to have learned from the old school generation to still understand its processes and procedures to get where it is today. You know, like I had another webinar with a Delaware librarian about tattooing, and I called it From Counterculture to Mainstream, because the counterculture, you had to be in it to know about it, whereas the mainstream now, everyone's an expert. Everyone has an opinion about everything, and they're all the masters of their own, you know, illumination in it, and don't want to learn anything about anything from anyone else, unfortunately. But
yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame in the fact that they are actually atrophying themselves from a an infinite potential of wealth of wisdom shared from just listening. I'm someone who talks a lot and tells a lot of stories as I tattoo, but it's important to listen as well, and I think the empowered, community that's into tattooing, they've already got it all figured out. And the sad part is you're missing out on the potential of what you could learn. I never ever, I've been tattooing for over 20 years. I never think I've got it. You know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be somebody coming in challenging me to create something I haven't done before. The ideas may be similar, but to do them in a new way. So you have to stay open, but also if you're getting tattooed by somebody who's only been tattooing for a year or 3, you know what I mean? There's not much to learn from someone who's been tattooing for 3 years. There's a lot to learn from people who've been tattooing for 20. I only got tattooed like by people who had been tattooing for 10 years or more, because there just wasn't that many people doing it. So they were all the only ones doing it, and they all kept the culture and the art and the knowledge close to their hearts, and weren't so willing to sell equipment to people and teach other people to do it. Not so much as being stingy, but protective of like a true, one of humanity's first art forms, really, next to cave drawing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tattooing is very modern, very mainstream, and very like sexy and sold, but it is absolutely an ancient art that has repercussions if you do not respect it. Hence house tattoos getting bad work.
Yeah.
It's easy to get the bad tattoo. It's not easy to get rid of it or fix it, and a lot of people don't even want to touch it. So
yeah, you see those like the little black crosses that people did when
the Demi Lovato one, right?
Hey, to
tattooers
piggyback
make
off of what go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say tattooers place bets on what's going to be cool next. Like, that's how fast it comes and goes. I think it's all good. I say if you're getting like, and I don't like to copy anybody. You know what I mean? I take homage and I'm inspired by things, and I always give credit, which a lot of people don't do. But any form of self-expression that's going to help you through your day or help you with your life path, like, I'm for it. You know what I mean? As long as you're not hurting someone else along the way. I have tattooed some very unique people on very unique traumatic life paths. And I worked with a psychic for a little while when I was learning my Reiki, who had asked me, he's like, I bet you've seen some haunted people over the years. And I didn't think about it until he asked me. And I was like, damn, I really have. Like, I've just seen a lot of people over the years come and go. And, you never know what's going to come through the door, like in tattooing. And I just found that to be exciting, until, gang people come in, which is always a challenge. But, they get tattooed too.
So
I was going to piggyback off of what you said as far as tattooing becoming mainstream, and now it's just everywhere on TV, on the internet. I was going to ask you, one, when you were talking about Flash in the shop, there is a piece that you said you were going to hold on to me if the person didn't come in to get it.
What was
Joker, the one Joker piece you had on the back wall.
Tip in the hat.
Yep.
Was it tip in the hat? Yeah. Oh yeah. No one's getting that one.
Yeah. So, but no.
That was the one Oh, go ahead. Sorry, man.
Oh no, go ahead. That was the one.
I was gonna say you meant the one that was inspired by Alex DeBarge, right? He has like the bowler.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But what's your take on? We briefly talked about it when you were doing my ink. Like, what's your take as far as with tattoo becoming mainstream with regard to the conventions and reality TV?
Well, for years I would go to council at conventions with like the elder community of tattooing as they've all are slowly passing, and they were there. I always wanted like their opinion on it before I generated one. I wanted to ask my predecessors, what do you guys think? Because at all costs, I'm try not to be a hater on anything that I don't agree with, because it's out of your realm of control. But a lot of the older community, when the shows first started coming around, the TV shows, they thought it was like a good thing and a bad thing. It was like this catch-22 where now it's in everyone's home, the cat's out of the bag. But also it was bringing more people in to be tattooed. So
Right.
and then there was a lot of talented guys, Paul Booth being one of them out of New York City. He's known for dark art, evil tattoos. He's really the first guy to make that like a trend and cool. He tattooed members of, what is it, Mudvayne and Pantera and Slayer and all these metal bands and stuff. And he was developing a show because he was working on all these famous people. So it was like his art and style was so inspiring. I used to go see him at the convention, and it was like there'd be like 30 people around his booth. This is before the TV shows. This is even before people had social media. His style had permeated the culture through the magazine so strongly that all the metalheads were like, this is the guy. And we were all going to watch, like, at Mecca, this dude create this art. And he did a lot of the freehand, which you've probably seen me do, and which was a big inspiration on me, Paul Booth's work. But he was trying to develop his own show, I think for Headbangers Ball or something like that, or MTV or something. And he was in New York and he'd been there for a long time, so it was only natural. But I think that it just kind of, once somebody starts that train, other people catch on to it and they start doing it themselves. And very much so like the Flash, one guy will do it this way, one guy will copy all that stuff and then paint it a different color. Like that's kind of what happened with tattooing. Is it just, once that somebody started that ball rolling about maybe doing a reality show on it, because reality shows were big and they were going for everything, and it just like took off from there. It didn't take long at all. And Hollywood loves to exploit stuff, so it's just another exploitive thing. And it loses a lot of its sanctimony in that process, unfortunately. But the history is always there. You know what I mean? It's never going to be deleted, so it will always come through. I think in the end, where we are now, that was 2005. I think Miami Ink came out, and Miami Ink was sort of a swipe off of Paul Booth's tattoo show idea. They just, got some super attractive people who were, connected into tattooing and had them people do it. You can't put ugly people on TV, you know what I mean? Well, Paul Booth is very menacing looking. He has like his face tattooed and dreads that run down the back of his head like some sort of H.R. Geiger character. He's intense, you know what I mean? And that's probably a lot for audiences to take in at a time when that stuff was just like breaking out into the mainstream. Yeah. So before the TV shows, the Discovery Channel would actually do spotlights on taboo cultures, and they would do things like the tribes that like do the parades where they like stab themselves in the cheek and they're like going through the pain and ritual. And then they would have a little segment on tattoo conventions. And they once, like, I was lucky enough to be in the community before that stuff happened, that a lot of people were saying that once you started seeing the cameras come in to record everything, the culture, the elders in the culture were like, it's over. The history is over, because now they're going to sell it to anyone. And they have. You can buy the equipment anywhere nowadays. Whereas when I got in, I had to like beg, borrow, and plead to get the equipment. You know what I mean? Like, I just want my own tattoo machine to make,
it was more of an apprenticeship than the selling of a trade, if you will.
So the apprenticeships were more formal and more direct and more intense. Whereas now, if you've got, type A person that, might be able to bring type B people in, here's a tattoo machine, you can draw a little bit, like, go do it. And then they'll put out bad work. But if the masses don't know the difference between the quality, then you're still making money. It's the same thing with like a mechanic who like nickels and dimes you or overcharges you. There's a lot of that going on in tattooing. The integrity is what evaporates with the mainstream aspects to it all. The television shows, the social media have brought great things in, and also created unnerving things that we're all dealing with still today. It sort of cranked the competition up to 11 and turned the community down to 3, unfortunately. So, everyone has their own way. None of this is fact as much as it's just my experience, like what I've lived through being a tattooer through multiple decades.
And that's what we're asking you about, because your experiences and thoughts and knowledge about it.
Yeah. Some people would argue if it's hurt more than it's helped. I don't think you really have a choice in it. It's here. So it's more about dealing with what's at hand. There's a lot of issues with it now. The quality of the work has gone up and it has gone down. And now there's the ability to sort of doctor your imagery with the social media. Is it a true image of what the tattoo really looks like? There's a lot of arguing going on in the community about it, but I think that is a distraction away from what we're really doing. I have a modest following on the internet. I like to say anything's better than zero. It's not in the millions by any means, and I don't know that I'd want it to be. You know what I mean? Like I like, the studio that I'm looking at, all I'm here is all original artwork from a lot of my favorite artists. Thousands of dollars of original artwork, all made by hand, So I'm a by hand guy, which I handle each client individually, with Marcus, and that's what I do, because I think that's the best way to make the craft. Other people are going to be more money grabbing. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't really socialize a lot with a lot of tattooers because there's such diverse respect and lack of for the art and the sacredness to it that I've learned. So I tend to just sort of stay in my lane and let others do their own thing and have their own experience with it. But I'm grateful to be here. If I didn't do another tattoo, I'd be like, man, that was one hell of a career.
So
Not a lot of people can become artists for a living.
Will people be able to come and talk to you at Monster Mania in March about this? Or are you primarily going to be there as the comic book artist?
I tried to keep the two separate for years. I really did. I would go to Wizard World and work the comic book stuff, and then I'd go to the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention and do that. And then all of a sudden I'm at Wizard World one year and there's a tattoo section, and everyone's like, "Are you working here?" And I'm like, "No, I'm selling comic books." And then it just like I was saying with the mainstream, it just overlapped. It's just like this kaleidoscope now, and to see yourself in it is actually kind of difficult. But yeah, I'm always available to talk about it. I've done it for a really long time, and so I tend to be busy. But if people are willing to wait, I'm happy to do it. And I book people, and it's exclusive, and it's their appointments on their day, and very rarely is there anyone else that day. So I'm always down to talk about it with anybody. Yeah, I actually like to talk about it. A lot of times I can't go anywhere without talking about it. And so my mentor Bob, he always said to me, I started tattooing when I was 21 and I'm 45. So he always said to me, he was like, "You're going to be an ambassador for it." He's like, "You're not going to have a choice." And, I was very okay with it at the time. I thought it was exciting and cool. I still feel that way, I still feel gracious to be on the shoulder of so many giants that have come and broken out the mold. A point I wanted to make was, for me, what sealed the deal for me was, and this is a segue from horror, seeing Dusk Till Dawn and George Clooney take his jacket off at the end. I knew then that I wanted to be tattooed. That was it. I loved punk rock and metal, but when I saw that reveal, I'm like, man, that's cool looking. I want to have that look. And then I started to get tribal because it was very popular at the time, and then evolved right out of that into like full color work and all this crazy style. I got all kinds of styles, but I wanted to mention that because it's a horror movie a lot of people love, and the artist who designed that was an artist by the name of Gil Monty, and he tattooed Roseanne Barr and ran Sunset Strip Tattoo on Sunset Strip for many, many years. He's probably tattooed every 80s glam band there is. He's still out there kicking ass today. And he was a friend of my mentor, which is sort of full circle. So it was like, I was inspired by something that somebody did, and then I met this guy who taught me how to tattoo, and he knew that guy. And that's tattooing. Like, that's how it works,
It's ever always enlightening and inspiring talking to you. And it's always kind of, whenever we have had the opportunity to, it's like, in tattooing as in life, In
Yeah,
comic art,
yeah,
as in life. But really, I
yeah,
guess
it's all
that's the whole
connected.
point, is the flow of everything. And it
You're
has
going, yeah,
been a true honor, and thank you for taking this time. And
yeah.
we've chatted for a little bit here,
All
so
right.
come out and see Buz at Monster Mania, talk about comics, make an appointment for a tattoo.
Check
And
out his
thanks for joining
Instagram.
us, Marcus, and we'll see you guys later.
Thanks
Don't
for having
forget,
me again. It's been great.